Round one.
On round one, Dave Trafford is here, chief executive producer at Story Studio Network, host of Now and Next, and the new Politically Speaking podcast, and the new... Okay, I'm not sure what that copy means, but we're big fans. Brampton City Councillor Rowena Santos and Pavan Brach is here, serial entrepreneur in health and tech. Sorry to mangle that, Dave Trafford, but one of the titles of your podcast was missing, so you can do some promo right now.
That's okay. We've put On the Ledge just on hiatus for a couple of weeks just to take a breath while they get organized at Queen's Park. But in the meantime, we've launched a show called Politically Speaking. It is in the Now and Next feed. So that's where we put it. We had Kathleen Wynne, John Tory on this week with John Wright and Keith Leslie. And we talked about the Mark Carney situation. I hear he did well, so I thought we should talk about it.
Okay, so listen, let's start with this dizzying trade war. And Rowena, you've been on the front lines of it, so I'll let you go first. Yesterday, within a matter of hours, I mean, first of all, Trump said that he was going to delay some tariffs, but he was going ahead with steel and aluminum. Then apparently somebody yelled down the phone at Doug Ford, who decided to put his tariff or fee on hold for the time being. And now he's off to Washington for more negotiations. And who knows what today will bring, Rowena?
Well, this is what happens when you're dealing with somebody very unreasonable, irrational, and a bully. I love the way that Ford continues to champion and lead this on behalf of Ontario and, quite frankly, the country by pushing against a bully with similar tactics. And so the idea of shutting off electricity in the States did something to Lutnick and to Trump to warrant now a meeting that's happening apparently in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. And Ford is taking this incredible approach of talking to American residents through their own media channels in the U.S. and making sure that Americans understand, because they didn't before, and maybe they don't yet, to understand the impact on them. And once that happens, together with the business community, some of their own political representatives in the United States, that pressure is going to be overwhelming for them. And hopefully Trump starts to listen. In the meantime, like I was saying before, I wake up in the morning, don't know if electricity is on or off in New York, if a tariff has gone up and down, if it's gone, if alcohol is still on or off the shelves. We're in a battle. We're in a war.
Pavan, the president's communique yesterday, if we can call it that, because he was ranting on Truth Social, included some taunts like, Canada will be our cherished 51st state. You can still sing You're Beautiful, Oh Canada, but it will be a state song. And it's just, my heart sank. I got this from Joe on my phone, and I'm sitting there at the gym reading it, and I'm thinking, this is insanity.
Yeah, just delete it. He's obviously continuing with his rants, and I think the entire world is watching and him do multi-generational damage to the American reputation, to America's word of being of any value whatsoever, whether it's in business or in government. Who will ever trust this guy in this country? Sadly, which is really unfortunate. And these threats, we've seen it over and over again. He backs down and he backs down and he backs down. Ultimately, doing what he's proposing to do would immediately destroy the American economy. And so we just have to stay calm. And I think, quite frankly, the most important thing that all of us can do is to pick the right leader for Canada in the upcoming election, what we hope is an upcoming election. It will be a wartime prime minister. It will be a prime minister who has to guide this country through and make some very serious decisions economically, obviously militarily, and we really have to choose carefully and put aside kind of our traditional points of view and see who is going to be the best at leading us against this chap down south.
Dave Trafford, the New York Post profiles Doug Ford today, but the opening says Doug Ford blinked yesterday. I thought maybe it was a very intelligent climb down as opposed to a surrender.
I'm not sure it was either. In terms of the way this has been set up, I think that among other things, the premier wanted to get and has always said that they went to Washington to get the attention of the Americans, and they have done so. Howard Lutnick, I think the order of operations here is interesting. First, it's the Truth Social post. Then it sounds as if Lutnick's office calls Ford and says, okay, we need to sit down and talk about this. Then Ford says, we're going to talk. And so before we conclude those conversations, we're going to withhold any action on the tariffs on energy. Then they're going to meet. In the meantime, he's meeting with Carney. So I think there's far more purpose in all of this in terms of getting their attention and having them reduce the tariffs than might otherwise be qualified as blinking or a climb down.
Meanwhile, what do you make of this? A survey that tracks year to year favorability of other countries' citizens toward the United States. And the survey tracked positive opinions from June of last year to today. The only one to change significantly was the view of the USA. And in Canada, it went from 52% to 33% favorable view. And Pavan, I think you were the one who was saying this is going to be intergenerational. I think that this hate on that Canadians have right now, this anger, is going to last.
Yeah, I think it will last. It's going to be something. We sit around at the dinner table and our kids are listening and watching and seeing, and it's not going to be forgotten. That's for sure. And I think it's really. I want to say something too, that it's very encouraging to see the rest of the free world is going through the same thing. The rest of the free world has stopped booking trips to America as much as they might have in the past. We saw a few days ago quite a rally with the EU stock market and the EU as a currency for the euro rather. And I think we have to remember we're not alone. We share values with a large swath of both Europe and Japan and Korea and other countries as well. So, and I think that we will come out of this thing much stronger. And quite frankly, we do have so much strength in what we have as a country, and we'll be fine.
Dave Trafford, though, this sort of squandering of the great relationship is perplexing, to say the least.
I suppose, but I think that at the heart of it is we just don't like autocrats. We don't like dictators. I mean, if you look down the list, we don't like China, we don't like Russia or Iran. Yeah, I mean, that what's shocking, I think, about it is that the United States is now in that neighborhood. But this is obviously a direct response to Donald Trump. But I think Powden's right that this is going to be one of these things that will be a bruise still that we've not recovered from generations from now. And for better or worse, it's made us stand up and take stock of where we are and what we mean in the world. So what we do with or without the United States. I know our friend David Schultz from Hamlin University, he's talked often about what will Europe do without the United States involved in NATO. And he was banging that drum years before it happened. So I think this has actually been the need and the reason for us to come to terms with those things.
Rowena, you've been in the U.S. since this whole thing blew up, and I wonder what it has to be like to deal one-on-one or in groups, whatever, with American citizens, some of whom may have voted for Trump and some of whom may even like this.
So I have an uncle, a professor of international economics who lives in Ohio and is married to his husband for many years in Cleveland. And then I have an aunt in Bellflower, United States in California. And my uncle supported Kamala Harris and is a Democrat. My aunt supported Trump. It's something that with my American relatives, we don't talk about politics per se when we're all together. Nonetheless, when I do talk to them, they both say to me, whether they supported Trump or Harris in the last election, that they don't blame Canada for feeling the way that we do. And that, when I say to my family members and friends in the U.S., they could take my Canadian flag and my citizenship from my dead cold hands. They get it. They understand. And certainly they say to me, you know what, if the situation was reversed, we would feel the same way about Canada.
Meanwhile, Pierre Poilievre, apparently his strategy on abortion, he has said he's not going to bring about any legislation on abortion should he become the prime minister. He says in a letter with an anti-abortion supporter, he said he's going to promote adoption. He is himself adopted. Dave Trafford, I guess it's a strategy. I don't know if it's going to objectively reduce the number of abortions that take place.
This sounds to me like a solution in search of a problem. I mean, we want to bring this up time and time again. We haven't had an abortion law in Canada since, the late 80s, early 90s. This has not ever been on the radar for any party since then, realistically. It doesn't seem odd to me that the leader of any major party would respond to a constituency who had some concern about a particular policy and gave an answer, and he gave an answer. So whether you like that or not, I'm not even sure that it brings up this sort of, you used the word before, zombie idea around stories. This is a zombie issue that goes nowhere. So to me, it's just one of these really, okay, it's look at that. It's Tuesday, it's Wednesday, whatever day it happens to be, right?
Pavan, do you think it's an elegant solution to a political problem?
I think it's a big mistake, to bring it up. I mean, I think this is the kind of stuff that's going to be leveraged by, the new leader of the Liberals. He's going to, kind of create doubt and misconstrue the comments about being pro-adoption as being anti-choice. Which he is not. So he and his wife both are pro-choice. I admire the sentiment, obviously, that adoption should be something that's always encouraged, and we considered it at one point in time as well. And it's a complicated process, and maybe too complicated. So, but I think politically, strategically, it's probably a bit of a mistake to get into it.
Rowena, your thoughts?
Yeah, I got to agree with Pavan as well. Politically, it's a bit of a landmine for Poilievre. And I support more supports for adoption and options for adoption. But obviously, I'm a pro-choice person. And politically, this further aligns Poilievre closer to where Trump's politics are. And I'm sure the Liberals and the NDP will use that against him.
So would you have ignored that letter from the constituent then, and particularly a loud voice like that? If they had written to you on a topic like that was consequential, you would have ignored it?
No, I wouldn't have. I definitely would not have ignored it. I would have responded, obviously, but it just puts Poilievre and them into a very bad political position, very controversial one.
And very quickly, Dave, I'll come to you, and you may be the only person who gets to weigh in on this. But I think everyone remembers this horrible case of a driver who was driving over the influence and ran down two hockey players on bicycles. And his lawyer is arguing that because they had elevated blood alcohol levels, the case should be thrown out.
I think the issue here is that the grand jury didn't have access to that information, and so that kind of taints the whole issue. But there's no good answer here, John. The fact is that those two guys were killed in a horrible accident. The guy who was driving the car over the legal limit. The Goudreau brothers. It was just a terrible thing. They were at their sister's wedding. All of that stuff. But I don't know how you analyze that outside of the emotional side of it without sounding like you're blaming the victim.
Thanks for this. Good to have all of you today. Dave Trafford, Pavan Brach, and Rowena Santos. That's round one. Round two coming your way in the next hour.